Hello and welcome to the TC Exchange podcast. I'm Amity Krause, ex-retail girl turned realtor turned business owner, where I teach new transaction coordinators how to navigate the complex real estate industry and coach experienced TCs how to level up their game and businesses to add even more value to their agents. Come along with me while I guide you through this intense, complicated, but always fun world of transaction coordination. Welcome back to the TC Exchange, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of transaction coordination, sharing tips, tricks, and inspiring stories to help you navigate your career with confidence. I'm your host, Amity Krause, here to guide you through another episode dedicated to turning setbacks into stepping stones. Whether it's mastering contracts, keeping on top of deadlines, or enhancing communication with clients and agents, today we're all about transforming challenges into opportunities for growth. So grab your notebook and let's turn those lessons into successes together. Today, we are going to explore the importance of embracing mistakes. It is all about perspective. We want to be seeing errors not as failures, but as invaluable learning opportunities. We'll discuss common setbacks transaction coordinators face, from misreading contracts to missing crucial deadlines, and how these moments, although challenging, are ripe with potential for growth. Let's start by talking about having a growth mindset. I believe this really touches three areas. Having a growth mindset means believing that a person's abilities aren't innate, but can be improved through effort, learning, and persistence. A growth mindset is all about the attitude with which a person faces challenges, how they process failures, and how they adapt and evolve as a result. It's particularly important to embrace this attitude because the real estate industry is incredibly fast-paced, and learning constantly is one key of success. Having a growth mindset will foster resilience. Resilience allows us to bounce back from setbacks more quickly than others and stay focused on the big picture and long-term goals. If you have a growth mindset, you can also embrace challenges with an open mind and it encourages you to be innovative and solve problems in a creative way. This leads to more effective strategies when dealing with complex transactions and your agent's needs. To foster a growth mindset, I absolutely encourage you to seek out any training that you can. Read wonderful books, not only from the real estate world, but in leadership and business, and on any new experiences that put you in the room with people you can learn from. Now, one area that I think that you can do that's very important anytime you have an instance where a mistake has been made, you're going to want to conduct what I call a constructive mistake analysis session. Now, this is something I don't think a lot of people do. I think that a lot of times when errors are made, there's a lot of time spent pointing fingers at other people versus analyzing what the problem is, solving the problem first of all, and then figuring out what caused the problem and how to fix it. So I think that anytime that there's been an error in a process, and this goes from any industry, this mistake analysis session is going to allow you to uncover the gaps that may be in your process or system that will allow you to fix them and prevent the problems from happening from the beginning. The first thing you're going to do is create a safe environment. You are going to have a non-judgmental, open environment where any member of the team feels safe to share their experiences and their mistakes without fear of being reprimanded. That's not what the purpose of this analysis session is. The purpose of the analysis session is not about recrimination or punishment or pointing blame. It's about uncovering where the issues are. Now, you're going to focus on the process, not the person. So you're going to focus on the actions taken rather than focusing on the individual. This is going to help you identify those systemic issues and find solutions without assigning blame. Now, how we do this, or how I love to do this, is what I call the 5 why technique. And I think you can probably Google some details about it. But this is what I love. This 5 why technique basically allows you to drill down to those root causes by asking the question why until you uncover the underlying issues. Now, don't get caught up on the 5 whys. It could be less than 5. It could be more than 5. That's not what the point is. The point is that you keep digging to find the answer and what the actual root cause is. So here is a very simplified example of the 5 why technique. So here's our problem. Our problem is that a real estate action failed to close on time. First question. Why did the transaction fail to close on time? Well, because the final closing documents were not ready. Okay, second question. Why were the closing documents not ready? Because the mortgage approval process was delayed. Question 3. Why was the mortgage approval process delayed? The final sales price was not included on the closing documents. Why were the closing documents missing the final sales price? Because the lender did not have the final amendment changing the sales price. Why did the lender not have the final sales price on that amendment? Because the TC missed sending that document to the lender. Do you see how it works? So you've taken those questions and you've drilled down and found that this process didn't close on time because the transaction coordinator on that file did not send the amendment to the lender. So you can keep on going in there. Why did the TC not send the lender? Because the buyer didn't sign it. Why did the buyer not sign it? The buyer didn't sign it because it hadn't been approved by the seller. It can go on and on and on. So you just keep on digging and digging and digging until you find the answer to that question. In this instance, because we're keeping simple, the TC missed it in their checklist. So what you want to do then is go back and take a look. Here's the checklist. What can we do in the checklist to make sure that a task like this, sending an amendment onto a lender, doesn't get missed? Once that root cause is identified, it becomes easier to implement a targeted solution that prevents the problem from recurring. It keeps you logical, which is what I love about it. It keeps it logical, keeps it step by step, focusing on cause and effect, and it also promotes a deeper understanding of the problem. Having a deeper understanding of the problem is going to lead to more effective solutions. So then you have conducted your analysis session. You're going to create actionable steps for improvement. You're going to finish out your session when everybody who's involved with a development of clear and actionable steps that address the identified issues. And you're going to assign responsibility for those actions to ensure accountability. And then finally, you're going to schedule follow-up. I think that these kind of check-ins are so important to resolving issues and focusing on learning so that you can get past that moment where you feel like you're the worst person in the world and you've solved the problem and it's not going to happen again. So next up, we're going to talk about contracts. Now, I'm not going to get too far into it. We know what contracts are. We know our job as a transaction coordinator, that it is our responsibility to dig in and understand the clauses in the contracts and what could cause a contingency clause to fail. So, we have contingency clauses like inspections and financing and appraisal. So those obviously impact the transaction timelines and everybody's obligations. So it's important to understand what those clauses are, and that is going to vary by the state, and what is at risk if the contingency is not cleared, what can happen. Now, as a transaction coordinator, are you going to be interpreting contracts? No, not really. And that's not what your job is. And it's certainly not your job to relay that information to the buyer or seller because you're not that agent, but you should have a general understanding of how it works. Now, I'm always going to tell you, your client, your agent, everybody, if you ever have any questions, go to the broker, go to your state's legal hotline, whatever you have to do, be the source of the source, but it's important for you to have a general understanding of how those clauses work. It's also really important to understand in your contracts, your termination clauses. So really take a look. This is the question you always want to be asking is, what happens if? What happens if the buyer doesn't like their inspection report and they want to back out? What happens if the appraisal comes back low? How does the buyer get their earnest money back? What happens if the lender is not able to loan the client the money to purchase the home? These are the questions that you need to understand in that point of termination. What happens if the contract terminates? So we've talked a lot about checklists and templates. We've talked about educational resources. These are the things that you're going to want to go back to and look at your local experts, go to your local experts about contract comprehension. And if you do get into a situation where you've misunderstood a contract, your agent has misunderstood a contract, this is the absolute truth. What you're going to have to do, you're going to need to be open and accountable. You have to encourage that culture of openness and accountability where you understand there's been a mistake and focus on learning and improvement rather than assigning blame. And we've talked about that already. And I'll tell you stories. I have tons of stories of where I screwed up and I misunderstood something or I missed something. And one thing that I have never done is tried to make excuses for why something didn't happen, because excuses have no place when you're trying to solve problems. What you do is, like we talked before, we go through that constructive analysis session, figure out what caused the problem and what you're going to do to prevent that. Now, sometimes that's in a group, but sometimes it's you yourself sitting there feeling like garbage because you screwed something up and something is at risk. And now you need to figure out, one, what happened, confess to what happened, and how you're going to prevent that from happening in the future. That goes so far in helping the people around you know that you're going to take accountability and that you are going to be part of a solution and not be passing blame on to other people or pretending that you don't have any responsibility. So we talked pretty in depth about analyzing and deconstructing the problem and understanding where it's coming from and taking responsibility. We talked about implementing preventative measures and digging into your checklists and how you can adapt those. Sharing learnings, I think, is really important. I have a team meeting every week with my team of TCs, and we sit down and we talk. Tell me about what happened. Tell me what happened this week. And everyone shares, some stories about what happened in the previous week with contracts that they were working on, situations that they ran into. And it creates a very safe place for a lot of people to chime in and say, oh, I ran into that too. This is what I did to solve that for the future. Or, yeah, I have never seen that happen before, but I could see how it could happen. I'm going to do A, B, and C to make sure it doesn't happen to my agents. So sharing the information, you don't have to keep it a secret. We're all human. We make mistakes. All right, so now we talked a little bit about contracts. So let's talk about deadlines. It happens to everybody, okay? Everybody. You go along, maybe you're working in multiple states and one state allows contingency dates that fall on the weekend to roll over to the next business date, and some states do not, and you got them confused and you applied the wrong checklist. It happens, okay? So I really want to make sure that you are really dialing in your things like your calendar systems, your automation reminders, checking in regularly. You want to be auditing your checklists. I know sometimes it's really hard to go and fix a problem when you see it right away. Maybe it's, something as simple as a spelling error, something it's as simple as a date that's missing from your template. What I want you to do is just keep a running list, pop up a notepad or a note sheet on the side of your monitor on your computer and just keep notes so that at the end of the week you have some downtime. Maybe you have an extra hour, maybe you only have 20 minutes, but you know what you can do in those 20 minutes? You probably can knock out a bunch of those little things that you can fix. Regular auditing is very, very important. And it's one of those tasks that we always put off as doing because it feels tedious. But the truth is, it's probably not going to take you much time at all. Hopefully everybody's using technology to manage their time and tasks. We've talked many times about using project management tools like Asana and Trello, Monday, Open to Close, TC Docs. There's a ton of them out there. We've talked about document management. So your Google Drive, your iCloud Drive, everywhere, and how you're organizing those. Your mobile apps are really, really great. I love Slack on my mobile because I can get messages and set a reminder and come back to it when I have time. So it's really using the technology that's out there and available is going to be amazing. And I cannot stress again is about creating a culture of accountability. And this is something that I've been struggling with. I had a conversation. Actually, in the last podcast, we even talked about this, a culture of accountability and understanding that when you're giving someone accountability, when you're holding somebody accountable, you don't have to be a jerk about it, right? But you do want to create a culture where if somebody missed something, you can ask the question, well, what happened? Well, how do we prevent that from happening? Use that 5 why technique. Just keep on digging. What can we do? So setting clear expectations so that everybody understands what is expected of them. Clear is kind, as one of my favorite coaches shared with me many times. Being transparent, offering recognition, gosh, that goes such a long way. A culture of accountability is not only holding somebody responsible, but it's also sharing their wins and praising them and recognizing them for what they are doing. And I think we've talked enough about reviewing things consistently and auditing things and making adjustments to your processes and procedures. That's all going to help you reflect back and turn those setbacks that you may experience into successes. I think some other things that you want to think about are effective communication, obviously. So making sure that you are always being active listening, using simple language, confirming your understanding. Try not to use a ton of words. Just keep it very simple. But the truth is sometimes you're going to have hard conversations, and it's really important that you stay professional. It's not going to get you anywhere to talk down to anybody. Your agents are not your mom or your parent, and you are not their child. So speaking to each other as coworkers and friends and partners is very important. Being professional is really, really crucial, even when situations are emotionally charged. So I encourage you to try and keep a level head and focus on the issue at hand rather than focusing on any personal feelings you may be having about it. And one way you can really do that is approach things from a point of curiosity, seeking to understand, encourage those difficult conversation, and the goal being to understand the other person's perspective. I think it's really important. And then also offer solutions. I think that's one of the things we get caught up in, and why I love that 5 why technique so much, because it is about finding the solution. It's not about pointing fingers. It is about, let's get to this next, and offer those solutions. And sometimes, yes, you're going to have to escalate it. It might be necessary to move it on up, and whether that's to your agent's broker, whether that if you work on a team, that could be to your employer or the person who contracted you. If you're your own business owner, you may have to elevate it to yourself and ask yourself what you want to do. So it's important to know when you're going to need to move it up and escalate it, and when it's appropriate, and then how to do it in a way that maintains respect and professionalism. As we wrap up today's episode, remember, every setback is a setup for a comeback. It's all about how you learn from those experiences and apply them moving forward. I'd love to hear how you've turned a challenge into a learning opportunity in your career as a transaction coordinator. Reach out on our social channels or drop us an email. Let's keep the conversation going. And that wraps up another episode of the TC Exchange podcast. Thank you so much for joining me and being a part of this incredible journey through the world of transaction coordination. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity to learn, and together, we're setting the compass to true north. If you want to dive deeper into the world of TCs or simply connect with our growing community, follow us on Instagram at TrueNorthTCT. For exclusive content, insights, and engaging discussions, be sure to join our Facebook group, the TC Exchange. And for resources, courses, and a treasure trove of knowledge, check out our website at TrueNorthTransactionServices.com. Keep the conversations going, share your insights, and until next time, keep your compass pointing true north. See you soon.